So today we have the Clementoni T-rex that runs around and chases this little rocker, and this specific one is not doing that. So I'm turning it on to the movement mode and putting some very new batteries on it. So let's just remove the battery covers. They are located on each of his feet. As you can see, the batteries, they are fully charged. All of them have 1.6 volts on it. So now we do the test, turning it on to the adventure mode where he runs around, and as you can see, it does a lot of noise but does not move at all. When he asks for me to move the rocker, I do it, but he doesn't move at all. So we need to take it apart and see what's going on. So let's start by removing the batteries again and putting them somewhere safe. And now we start removing all the Phillips screws that this little guy has. With that done, we separate the head. We just need to make sure that all the screws are unscrewed before pulling so we don't break anything. And as you can see, once we remove the head, we will have 2 more screws on the neck to remove. In this part we just pull the 2 sides of the body off from each other, so we can then expose all the wiring and the motor. So we can see right here that we have 2 broken wires, a red and a black wire that connect directly to the motor, thus the reason he was not moving around. So we will need to repair these broken wires and connect them back to the main board, which is hidden away. And this is the red wire that is broken. These probably broke because of the sudden movements he does, and these wires, they are quite stiff, maybe due to the age, and that's the reason why they broke in the first place. To remove the board from the place, we just need to pull it out just a little bit so we can see where the wires are connected. As you can see, this bottom part is where the black wire is missing from. Here on a close-up we can see the broken red wire that was attached to some hot snot, and this black wire that just broke from the main contact. So we need to repair this red wire, and the black wire we need to solder it back in place. So let's start by removing the hot snot with our hot air station. I've put it at around 100 degrees so that it doesn't melt the plastic around the hot snot. To remove the wires, let's use a little bit of flux on each of the ends where it's soldered on, so we can then remove the wire and then repair it. Using the hot iron, just melt off the old solder until we remove the wire. Same thing on the board. Now, in order to fix this wire, we need to expose the broken parts and leave the copper out, so we can then solder it in place and do the repair. And the other side we will do exactly the same. We will cut the plastic around the copper and remove it, leave it long enough so we can then solder it back in place. So in order to solder the wires together, we need to put a little bit of flux, and as I don't have a pair of helping hands, I will need to use the mat as a base to work. So with a bit of leaded solder, I will heat up the wires and put the solder on top of it to help it flow into the wire itself. And I will use this little bit over here to heat up the wires now and connect them together. And as you can see, the solder is flowing through the wire, leaving it solid. Let's do the same on the other side so we can make sure that we have a solid connection. Now I will use a sleeve that has a little bit of solder on the middle as well, in order to make sure that this wire does not break again on the same side. This solder that it has on the middle is a low melt solder, so it will melt at around 180 degrees. So I've set my gun to around 200 degrees to make sure it will be fit and solid. With the wire repaired, we will now put it back in place. As you can see, it looks pretty good. Let's just test the connection between both ends, and it beeps. So now we will just take a little bit of the black wire on the end so we can solder it back into the board. So I still not perfected this technique, but I will work on it because I find it a little hard to do every time I try. So now we will melt this little solder into the wire. As you can see, it connected to it pretty well, and we will put it now on its final resting place. So the red wire will go first on the plus end. As I have not mixed the solder, it's still a unleaded solder, that's why it takes longer for it to liquefy, but eventually it will. And there we go. And same thing with the black wire. So I've soldered the other end of the red on the resistor there, but I did not film it. I am so sorry. Let's just clean this area out of flux where we worked. We will use some IPA and this toothbrush to clean everything up. And we will put it back together so we can test if our job worked or not. So let's give it a shot. And there it is. It's very energetic. So as you can see, it was just a couple of broken wires that were not allowing it to move around. Let's do a quick test on the ground, because this you will eventually fall off the table. So he moves very fast from one end to the other, and he rolls a lot. So if you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, subscribe the channel, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good week.
Vamos brincar às escondidas. Onde estás? Vou apanhar-te.